Was it 1300?
1300.
Hell yeah.
Holy shit. We did it.
I see some gunfire.
Did it, bro.
We still got a lot of game left, Cam.
Hey everyone, I'm Virtual Projectile, and this is the first in a series of commentary videos looking into the factors that go into long-distance sniping in computer games. In this series, we're going to take a deeper dive into the technical and conditional constraints for hitting long-distance snipes against other players in an online multiplayer environment. Shots that I've taken across several different games will serve as examples. I'll tell the story of how these shots came to be from conception to execution. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 1,307 meter headshot I hit in Warzone 2, along with my spotter and fellow video game sharpshooter, BLT No Bread. So why am I making this video? As of the date of upload, this is the furthest recorded kill in Warzone 2. But I want that to change. My hope is that by explaining the mechanics behind sniping in this game, more people will be inspired to try to break this record themselves and push the limits of what's possible. Long-range virtual sniping is definitely a niche topic to say the least, and as such, there's no standardized leaderboard. If and when this record is broken, I'll update the description of this video, so be sure to check it out down below. Hopefully, as the community grows, we can find a better way to track records. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first technical topic I want to talk about is also one of the most important: player render distance, or PRD for short. Render distance is the maximum distance of objects in a three-dimensional scene that are drawn by the rendering engine. Basically, what that means is that anything further away than the render distance will be invisible to you. This can be a building, a car, a mountain, or, in our case, another player. All objects in the in-game world will have their own render distance. This doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't there, just that you can't see them. In this case, let's talk about player render distance specifically. PRD can be as far as thousands of meters, like in Battlefield 4, or it can be as close as like 60 meters in a game like Minecraft. In Warzone 2, player render distance is exactly 800 meters if you're looking through your rifle scope, and 815 meters if you're using a spotting scope. This is the same as in Warzone 1. As you can imagine, players being invisible past a certain distance can complicate hitting them. The two little rascals on your screen have kindly agreed to demonstrate. Keep your eye on the spotting scope rangefinder on the left side as an example. Watch as they cross the boundary between 814 meters and 815 meters, aka the PRD, and watch as they both disappear from the screen. So how do we hit players at over 1,000 meters if they're invisible past 800? Well, fortunately for us, there are two workarounds. Number one, the red diamond that pops up when a teammate marks a player will appear on your screen regardless of distance. That means that if a player is further than 800 meters from you, you can still get an idea of their position if you have a spotter within their PRD that can mark them. The second workaround has to do with the fact that vehicle render distance is much further than player render distance in this game. As an example, take a look at this ATV, which we can see driving around at over 1,000 meters away. It's meaningfully further than the 800 meter PRD, but within the vehicle render distance of the game. Theoretically, if you aimed it where the driver should be, you could secure a kill. The next topic I want to discuss is max range, which is the furthest possible distance a bullet will travel in the game before disappearing. To figure out the exact distance in Warzone 2, I did some tests. First, a little background. Thanks to sim.gg, we know that all sniper bullets in Warzone 2, regardless of caliber, have the same air resistance, losing roughly 0.07% of their velocity per meter traveled, and gravity, which matches Earth's gravity, at negative 9.81 meters per second squared. That means that all bullets will slow down at the same rate, and they will all fall at the same rate. Therefore, if muzzle velocity is equal, then the curve that the round will follow is exactly the same for each rifle. Here, we have a build of the intervention that has the fastest muzzle velocity in the game, as of the making of this video, over 1,705 meters per second. The reason I don't have exact numbers is because it's 1,705 without attachment tuning, but I've tuned the gun to max out bullet velocity. Up to 1,592 meters, I can get hit markers on this truck in the distance. However, if I back up to 1,593 meters, suddenly I'm not getting hits on the truck, despite it appearing like the bullet is hitting. Notice how to hit the truck, I'm aiming with the dotted 12 line on the scope. This will be important later. I repeated this test several times with this gun, and no matter what, it seems the hard limit was 1,592 meters. There are 4 possible explanations for this behavior. Number 1. Bullets disappear after traveling a certain distance. Number 2. Vehicles can't be damaged by bullets after the bullets have traveled a certain distance. Number 3. Bullets disappear after traveling for a certain period of time. And 4. Tracers are incorrect past a certain distance. We can already eliminate number 4. By only backing up by 1 meter, suddenly I can no longer hit the truck. Even if tracers were wrong, I still should be getting hit markers on the truck because the point of aim wouldn't have materially changed between 1,592 and 1,593 meters. To figure out what's going on here, we need to do more tests. Next, what I did was use a different sniper build. This is the MCPR 300, also known as the Barrett MRAD. I have the exact same scope on it, but this build has a slightly slower muzzle velocity, about 1,650 meters per second, roughly 55 meters per second slower than the intervention. When I shoot at the truck at 1,592 meters, the distance at which I was able to hit it with the intervention, suddenly I can't hit the truck. Same thing if I move even closer. No hit markers, despite it looking like the bullet is impacting. This means we could eliminate number 2. After all, if vehicle damage was dependent on the distance a bullet had traveled, then we would expect both guns to get hit markers at 1,592 meters, which clearly isn't the case. We can also eliminate number 1. If bullets disappear after traveling a certain distance, then muzzle velocity shouldn't matter, but it clearly does based on this test. This leaves us with number 3. Bullets disappear after a certain period of time. We have more evidence for this fact. Remember when I mentioned we were aiming at the 12 line? When I'm at 1,592 meters with both guns, in order for it to look like I'm hitting the truck, I need to aim in the same spot, regardless of what gun I'm using. But this doesn't make any sense. The MCPR has slower muzzle velocity than the intervention, and, like I said, friction and gravity are the same across all the different sniper rifles. At this distance, I should have to aim several meters higher with the MCPR than the intervention if I want to hit the same spot. Likewise, if I do another test where I travel much further away from the truck, I still need to aim at the 12 line for it to look like I hit it. If you accept that bullets disappear after a certain travel time, then it all makes sense. Since gravity is the same, that means that the bullets will fall at the same rate. If they disappear based on time, not distance, then they should disappear at the same time too. Therefore, if they fall at the same rate and disappear at the same time, then the bullet will appear to fall the same distance on the reticle, to the 12 line on this scope. The bullets aren't hitting the truck past a certain distance, they just appear to because the tracers are lined up with the truck when they blink from existence. The implication of this result is that the furthest possible shot in this game is 1,592 meters, since I was using the gun with the fastest muzzle velocity in the game as of the date of this test. The slower your muzzle velocity, the lower max range you have. After reviewing these clips in my video editor, it appears that bullets will disappear after about 3 seconds, give or take a couple frames. Your mileage may vary based on the frame rate that you're running, your hardware, and the server tick rate, but a good general rule is that your max range is however far the bullet can travel in 3 seconds, given the muzzle velocity of the rifle you're using. The last technical limitation I want to talk about is a weird interaction with the Raptor FEM40 scope. This scope is controversial in the community because you could laze a target up to 1,700 meters, and then the reticle should theoretically drop down to where exactly you need to aim in order to hit that target. This scope works pretty flawlessly out to about 500 meters, and this can trivialize sniping at those distances, which is kind of frustrating. However, once you start getting out into longer distance shots like 600, 800, or 1,000 meter plus, the reticle on the scope will decouple from the actual point of impact, and this effect will increase as distance increases. For an example of this behavior, we're going to test on the same truck that we were using before, except this time only about 860 meters away, so hopefully it should be more visible. For a brief overview of how to use this scope, first you put your crosshairs on the target that you want to hit. Then you click the focus button. At this point, it'll show you the distance to the target, and the red dot on the reticle will move down to show you the elevation adjustment you need to use to hit that target, at least in theory. However, at this distance, when I aim at the cab of the truck and fire the rifle, you can watch as the tracer of the bullet goes and lands significantly below where I was aiming. Let's do this one more time for good measure. If I want to hit the truck, I actually have to put the reticle a couple meters above it. All else equal, this effect will increase with distance. This issue seems to occur when you have attachments or tuning that affects muzzle velocity. Not having velocity affecting attachments on your gun will reduce or outright eliminate this effect within 800 meters. Without muzzle velocity affecting attachments, however, your max range is reduced significantly, making this a moot point for longer shots. The angle that you're shooting at can also make a small difference, but usually nothing significant. That does it for the technical limitations I want to cover in this video. Let's move on to the next segment. The first conditional factor you want to think about when trying to hit your first long-range shot is map and mode. Probably the most important thing is map size. After all, if the map is only 800 meters wide, then how can you expect to get a 1,000-meter shot? In regular Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, the longest line of sight that you're going to find is the Sharif Bay Ground War map. This is the map you could see in the background of this video, where I hit a 766 meter headshot in the beta. This, however, was beaten by PureNsanitee with an 847 meter headshot using a spotter. This was about the max range you could find on this map, from spawn to spawn. In order to hit a longer shot, you need to branch out to the Al Mazrah map, which is found in DMZ, Warzone, and Plunder. This is by far the largest map in the game, and measures over 3,100 meters from top to bottom. Because this map is available in all the modes that I just listed, we have to look at some other factors to determine which one will give us the highest probability of hitting the shot. Let's start with DMZ. DMZ is good because you could bring in your own loadout via the insured weapon slot. It's also good because there are a lot of snipers that like to sit up in the radio towers and camp exfils. One of the hurdles with DMZ though is that if you die during a deployment, you're going to lose all the gear that you came in with, including your weapon, and if you brought it in with an insured slot, you're going to have to wait a while for that insured slot to cool down. Also, other players obviously don't want to lose their gear either, so they're going to play a little more cautiously. Next is Warzone, which in my opinion is the worst of the bunch. People play a lot more carefully in Warzone because you only have one life, unless you get bought back. It's also difficult to get your loadout in time before the circle gets too small. In my opinion, plunder is the best way to do this. For one, you get multiple lives, as do the enemy players, which makes them play a little bit less cautiously. Plunder's a much more chill mode where people go in just to grind weapons. You also only spawn in with 2 plates of armor and no self-revive, and most people won't get a self-revive by the time that they're killed. This makes it easier to get long-distance sniper kills because most players will just bleed out once they've been downed. There's also a higher percentage of solos in Plunder, which means if you do down someone, it's unlikely that they'll get revived by a teammate. All of these factors, in addition to being able to bring in whatever gun you want, make Plunder the best mode for hitting long-distance shots. When you get out to really long distances, you have to account for substantial drop and flight time. Therefore, you want targets that are stationary, alone, and without cover. And who fits those characteristics? Other snipers. Take a look at this guy, for example. He's focused on activity that's going on elsewhere, so he's stationary. This allows me to line up my shot to break his armor. Once I hit him, he doesn't have much mobility or any cover to hide behind, so his only option is to look for me. This allows me to line up another shot and knock him down. And because he's all alone, no one's coming to save him. All we have to do now is wait for him to bleed out, and this fight is finished.
Your fight is finished.
To find the sniper, you have to think like the sniper. So take the following steps to find your ideal positioning. First, identify where the action is happening. Then, find an elevated point near that action that snipers and parachuters alike will be drawn to. Next, establish a vantage point your desired distance away. If you want a 500 meter shot, go 500 meters away. If you want a 1,000 meter shot, go 1,000 meters away. It's up to you. But most importantly, be patient. You might be tempted to run all over the map hunting targets, but your shots will most likely be rushed and imprecise. Especially if you have a spotter chasing you all over the map, this is often cumbersome and unproductive. In my experience, it's easier to put the target where the bullet's going to be than the bullet where the target's going to be. In the previous example, I saw that there was action at Rohan Oil. This makes sense because the path of the plane was over Rohan, and there was a cash drop spot there. I knew that naturally a sniper would be drawn to go to the radio tower right by Rohan Oil in hopes of getting some kills. So I went to the hills by Quarry and waited. This was under 300 meters away, but if I was going for something 1,000 meter plus, I could go somewhere else like Observatory or Marshlands or Al Mazrah City. Of course, if you're going to be shooting at targets over 800 meters away, then you need a spotter. In these cases, communicate to your spotter where you think the target's going to be, and they should lay low somewhere with a line of sight to the target area. Usually closer is better so they can see better and feed you information about your shots, but if you recall from the earlier segment, as long as they're within the PRD, they can mark targets. Then it's as simple as shooting at the red diamond on your screen. And one last thing, despite what I said earlier about being patient, don't be afraid to reposition. Just make sure it's a deliberate and proactive choice. One of the most important parts about going for long-range snipes is the weapon system that you use. And fortunately for us, as of the making of this video, the game has 6 sniper rifles to choose from. Their in-game code names are as follows: the MCPR 300, Signal 50, LAB 330, SPX 80, Victus XMR, and the FJX Imperium. There are also some notable marksman rifles in the game, being the SPR-208, LMS, and SAB-50, but I tend to stay away from the marksman rifles because they're weaker than the sniper rifles, and they also generally have lower muzzle velocity. As for the sniper rifles, here's a chart showing bullet drop out to 1,000 meters with maxed out muzzle velocity. As of the time of making this video, the FJX Imperium is the fastest at 1,705 meters per second, closely followed by the MCPR-300 and the Victus XMR. And here's the build I went with. When conceptualizing this shot, I knew it was going to be between the FJX Imperium and the MCPR-300. While the FJX Imperium has the fastest muzzle velocity in the game, the MCPR-300 is only 55 meters per second below it at the second fastest in the game. The MCPR also has faster handling than the Imperium, which makes it the better all-rounder. Here's a stats breakdown of what I would consider to be the ideal build for each rifle. And as you can see, it's pretty close, but I think the MCPR-300 edges it out slightly. Of course, given what we know about max range, if you're going for 1500 plus, then the Imperium is going to be your best bet. And here's a breakdown of the attachments I used. Starting with one of the most important parts, the scope, I ended up going with the Raptor FEM40, despite the issues that we outlined earlier. The fact of the matter is, the Raptor scope has a really clean, unobstructed reticle, and the rangefinder is cool too. I have this tuned for a close eye position and faster aim down sight speed. At extreme distances, flinch resistance is irrelevant because you're not likely to get hit. On any rifle in this game, there are 3 attachment types that affect muzzle velocity. That would be the barrel, the muzzle attachment, and the ammo you're using. For this build, I chose the 22-inch barrel, tuned for aim down sight speed and recoil steadiness. You could disregard the damage range statistic because you're going to be shooting at targets that are at the minimum damage range anyway. Aim walking speed is also pretty irrelevant because you're likely going to be stationary when you're shooting at targets. Recoil steadiness is actually rather important because the more recoil your gun has, the harder it is to track your shots. For my muzzle attachment, I chose the FTAC Reaper suppressor. Suppressors are the only muzzle attachment that can increase your muzzle velocity, but you gotta watch out because some of them actually will hurt it. I tuned for bullet velocity and aim down sight speed. Bullet velocity and aiming stability are both important, so it could go either way with that one, but recoil smoothness has a negligible effect on the handling of your rifle, so I just stuck with aim down sight speed. Mounting is the best way to reduce recoil in this game, but your ability to do so while prone and by certain surfaces is restricted. So I put on a bipod which allows you to mount while prone and also on some surfaces that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. You'll also have less restricted aim while aiming down sight and mounted. In this case, I went with the level aim bipod, but really any of them will work. And finally, I put on the high velocity rounds. I tuned these to increase bullet velocity even further, although recoil steadiness wouldn't be a bad choice either. And in my opinion, both the damage range and recoil smoothness metrics don't really make a difference, so I went with recoil smoothness for good luck. For perks, I started with overkill so I could have a submachine gun in my secondary slot. This helped me defend myself when I'm trying to get to a sniper position. Then I chose double time so I can reposition faster if need be, focus so I could hold my breath longer, and ghost so I could stay off the radar. I also recommend bringing a spotting scope so you can identify and range targets if need be. Well, here we are. After hours of research and testing, and over 20 minutes of context, we're finally ready to review the shot. Plunder for Warzone 2 was released on April 26, 2023. The following night, we hit the shot. Our positioning was as follows. Not long after the start of the game, we identified movement at Observatory, Akhtar Village, and Marshlands. As such, the spotter, BLT No Bread, positioned himself on top of a building at Al Sharim Pass. From this vantage point, he could see the entire east side of Mount Zaya, including the observatory and the radio tower. Likewise, he had a view of the Kushak construction towers that are north of Marshlands. Our distance goal at this point was anything over 1,000 meters, and we believed that the most likely place a target would be the radio tower at Observatory. As such, I positioned myself on the roof of the police academy east of Al Mazrah City. I chose this spot because it was over 1,100 meters from the radio tower and therefore aligned with our goal. Though as luck would have it, a target never went to the radio tower. Instead, BLT No Bread spotted a target on the south telescope dome of the observatory. And the rest is history. BLT No Bread marked the target, I took the shots, and that's it. Now I'll show the clip in its entirety. As always, thanks for watching, and feel free to comment any questions you have down below. Best of luck out there. And remember, we still got a lot of game left.
Oh, I hit him.
Didn't move.
Loading. I hit him, bro. I hit him.
He's a
And
dummy.
he's staying.
Yeah, he's a big dummy.
Found him.
I lost spot.
Got him. Dead. Kill confirmed. Long shot. 1,300 meters.